people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy.
The undisputed super featherweight champion of the world, Alicia, the Baumgardner.
That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this per tweet from Dan Raphael. It appears Matchroom's Eddie Hearn and DAZN Boxing has a card in the works for July 15th in Detroit to be topped by unified women's 130-pound champion Alicia Baumgardner versus foe to be named co-feature between junior welterweights Richardson Hitchens and Colorado Love. Also in the works, Montana. Matchroom has done a very good job of familiarizing the boxing community at large with Alicia Baumgardner. Every move they've made for this fighter since she defeated Terry Harper has steadily increased her profile to where here and now, I think she's ready to headline her own shows. It's not just winning a belt, you know. Even winning a belt in sensational fashion. It's not just winning a belt, becoming a champion, because not every champion has what it takes to become a headliner. In some instances, there's more work needs doing. It's not as simple as winning a belt and going on to headline your own shows. You have to add to the fighter's marquee value, their market value, to where they're well known enough, notoriable enough, and endeared enough, revered enough that they can carry a show off their name alone. I think they've effectively done that with Alicia. Since she knocked out Terry Harper, successfully defended the WBC title against Edith Soledad Matisse. She was allowed to cross the street over to Boxer and Sky for the Mayor Unification match. Yeah. Won that fight. Yeah. Won the Mechaled fight afterwards. She's ready. She's become well known enough that she was actually in attendance for the recent premiere of Creed 3, the latest installment in the feature film franchise. Since beating Terry Harper, she has received a considerable profile boost to where I think she's ready to headline her own show in her native Detroit, where she's based out of. Has been for years. The last we heard was that they were looking at either former WBA featherweight champion Erica Cruz or former two-time WBO super lightweight champion Christina Linardatu. And of those two options, of those two names, I'd want to see Alicia run it back with Christina. If not next, after next. At some point, I feel there needs to be a rematch. I feel they need to run it back. It's not set in stone, you understand. Here and now, we don't know who it is Alicia is going to be fighting. And if by the time this video is uploaded, an official announcement is made, whether it's an Erica Cruz fight or a fight with some other fighter beyond that, I think a Linardatu rematch is in order. It needs to happen, perhaps more so than an Erica Cruz fight, because Erica Cruz is still coming off that loss to Amanda Serrano down there at featherweight in what was their undisputed title fight. She hasn't yet had the chance to rebound off that loss. She'd be moving up in weight for the fight from 126 up to 130. The Linardatu fight, for my money, is the better fight, because that's the fight with backstory. That's the fight where the stage is set. Christina Linardatu gave Alicia Baumgardner her first professional loss some years ago. It's the only loss on Alicia's record, and a lot has happened since then. She's grown, fully developed into a well-rounded fighter and a reigning champion. Not just a reigning champion, an undisputed one. Who's peaking? Alicia is at the pinnacle. She's peaking. She's in her prime. Now is the best time to exact vengeance on Christina Linardatu. Now or never. It would be ideal for Alicia and Christina to run it back in Detroit. Their initial fight took place in Louisville, Kentucky 5 years ago. 5 years and 8 fights later, Alicia Baumgardner is a new and improved version of herself, confident. I've long maintained that loss that Alicia suffered at the hands of Christina was a blessing in disguise. Sometimes when a fighter suffers a loss early in their career, it actually ends up making them a better fighter for it. Because when you're fighting and you're winning and you've got your O intact, maybe you get to thinking that you ain't got nothing to improve upon, nothing that needs attention, nothing that needs working on. That loss, it'll bring you back down to earth. It will humble you, hold a mirror up to you. We see this in young fighters like Amy Timlin and Taylor Robertson, who have since improved since suffering losses early in their careers. I think that applies to Alicia Baumgardner. That loss to Christina years ago was a blessing in disguise. No O to protect, just guts and glory. Alicia's ready to run it back with Christina, I think, and I like her chances in a rematch, though you have to tip your hat off to Christina Leonardatu, because going into a potential rematch, she would have a mental edge, that she's not in unfamiliar territory, that she's the only woman that ever beat Alicia. It makes for an interesting fight. Don't know. You know, Christina wasn't allowed to box Michaela Mayer in the United Kingdom on the premise of some lens issue in her eye. Seems very sketchy to me. And it's unfortunate because she actually walked away from an order, a mandated title fight between herself and Chantel Cameron, prioritizing the Mayer fight instead, just for the Mayer fight to end up not happening. Now, Chantel Cameron's fighting Katie Taylor and Christina Leonardatu. She may be fighting Alicia. Seems that Christina hasn't left the gym. She's getting ready for something. So maybe the people at Matchroom get her a keep busy fight, an interim fight, en route to a Baumgardner rematch, or maybe the rematch happens straight away. Either way, it needs to happen. Christina's not otherwise preoccupied with anything. Her and Alicia have unfinished business. Maybe they'll settle it in Detroit in July. In other news, a continued story we've been talking about a lot here on the channel. Paramount cuts 25% of staff from TV networks. MTV News is shutting down. As this pertains to boxing, particular Showtime boxing, we have to question what their role in the sport is going to be in the future. As the cuts keep coming, Chris McCarthy-Swath of Paramount Global is laying off 25% of its domestic team today. The reduction comes on the heels of integrating Showtime into his cable and streaming purview, which will be consolidated into two functions going forward. There are studios, quote unquote, which now combine Showtime with MTV Entertainment Studios and quote unquote networks, which will merge 9 separate teams into one portfolio group. The majority of the cuts are being felt by the latter group, with certain units, including MTV News, being shut down altogether. Paramount Global had 24,500 employees company-wide as of the end of 2022. While the scale might be staggering, another round of layoffs was all but inevitable, given both the degree of consolidation and the broader health of the marketplace. The cuts come roughly half a year after Showtime's longtime leader, David Nevins, was shown the door, with other top execs, including Showtime president Jana Winograde, following earlier this year. McCarthy has been busy reimagining the Showtime brand. Wow, so Jana Winograde is gone? In their absence, increasingly focused on 3 buckets of programming: diverse cultures, anti-heroes, and high-stakes worlds. The projects don't fit squarely into those buckets, but have been shelved and, wherever possible, sold elsewhere. As McCarthy sees it, it's a way to provide clarity, as he recently told The Hollywood Reporter. A way higher hit ratio. More recently, parent company Paramount Global posted dismal quarterly earnings, citing such factors as an 11% drop in TV ad revenue. CEO Bob Bakish said in a call with investors that the company is navigating a challenging and uncertain macroeconomic environment, and you see the impact of that on our financials, as the combination of peak streaming investment intersects with cyclical ad softness. These are challenging times. To be sure, Paramount is hardly alone in its bloodletting. Warner Brothers Discovery, for instance, completed a series of layoffs as well as a corporate reorganization last year, while Disney is in the midst of cutting 7,000 positions across the company. Here is McCarthy's full memo to staff. It ain't pretty. As we finalize the integration of Showtime and continue to transform our business for the future, we have set a great foundation for continued success by consolidating our group into 2 functions: studios integrating Showtime and MTV TV entertainment studios into one powerful studio team, networks combine 9 separate teams into one portfolio group. This combination has resulted in an incredible track record of hits including Yellowstone, 1883, Tulsa King, South Park, The Challenge, Teen Wolf, 1923, Drag Race, Mayor of Kingstown, Your Honor, George and Tammy, and Yellow Jackets, which taken together drove record subscribers across Paramount Plus and Showtime and helped Paramount Plus lead the industry in new subscriber growth.
You'll notice that those are all story-based programs.
Which is what Showtime primarily specializes in. They're not a sports network.
They're not The Zone. They're not ESPN.
The memo continued, however, despite this success in streaming, we continue to feel pressure from broader economic headwinds like many of our peers. To address this, our senior leaders in coordination with HR have been working together over the past few months to determine the optimal organization for the current and future needs of our business. As a result, we have made the very hard but necessary decision to reduce our domestic team by approximately 25%.
25% of 24,500 jobs is approximately 6,000, a little over 6,000.
6,100. On top of the first round of layoffs Showtime already saw, they have this next wave.
It ain't pretty.
This is a tough yet important strategic realignment of our group. Through the elimination of some units and by streaming others, we will be able to reduce costs and create a more effective approach to our business as we move forward. Today, we will notify employees whose positions are being impacted, with leaders communicating the news directly to those teams or individuals. These meetings will be followed by individual one-on-ones with our HR partners.
Where does boxing fit into all of this?
That's the question. At a time when Showtime and its parent company, Paramount, are consolidating efforts in order to reduce costs, you have to wonder if boxing continues to be a part of Showtime's bottom line. Do they really need it? Because if they don't, they might cut it.
They're just trying to survive. They're trying to keep their heads above water in these changing and trying times, with a sharp focus on story-based programming that drives subscriptions. And that's not boxing.
The memo continued, I realize these decisions will be very hard for everyone, most of all those who will be leaving. It's not something we take lightly. We have some of the most passionate and dedicated team members who bring their full selves to drive our brands and business forward. This is why it's so difficult to say goodbye to our friends and colleagues. To those impacted, we deeply appreciate the passion and creativity you have brought every day. I want to thank you for your many contributions.
We'll notice way back there in the article, the aforementioned shows they were having success with that helped to drive subscriptions. They didn't mention boxing. They didn't mention sports.
Boxing and sports, at least these days, is not an area of strength for the Showtime platform.
It's more of a pet project these days.
The average Showtime subscriber is not subscribed to Showtime for boxing. They're there for story-based programming.
What's affecting the way people consume content these days is that it's a lot more fragmented. More and more individuals are spending time on the internet as opposed to watching regular television, cable networks.
The audience is divided, as is the ad revenue, detailing the ad softness that McCarthy mentioned earlier.
Premium cable networks aren't drawing as many eyes as they used to because the audience is divided.
And as a result of that, they have to shed the excess and trim the fat to keep their heads above water. HBO Max, they left boxing a long time ago.
It's almost like they saw this coming.
HBO, like Showtime, is a premium cable network, once considered the industry standard, the industry leader in the sport.
They left, so if HBO can walk away from the sport of boxing, surely the same can happen with Showtime.
It's possible, and I'm not rooting for these people to lose their jobs. That's just the reality of this situation. They are restructuring the way they do business at Showtime and Paramount, and that may or may not mean that boxing gets the axe. On one end, you say that boxing for Showtime is relatively inexpensive, but on the other end, you say that these are trying times, challenging times.
And they don't have time for pet projects right now. That's what boxing is to Showtime.
It's not 2015, 2016, 2017, or 2018, all right? It's 2023. Things have changed.
Things are different now.
Haven't you noticed how many of the PBC's fighters are sitting idle on the shelf collecting dust? Not fighting?
I'd wager this has a lot to do with that. They don't have as many fight dates as they used to.
Belt tightening would be the why. Now, I saw former WBA champion Yordanis Ugas take to social media and say, I miss fighting so much. I miss competition. I'm coming off a serious injury, and I feel like a year has been so long out of this. I work hard, no date yet, and I don't even know who wants to see me. But I want to continue the path of big fights at 147 and do them now.
It's going to be a problem.
Some may point to Yordanis Ugas' fractured orbital bone that he suffered in the Errol Spence Jr. fight. It's been a little over a year since that fight. When Naoya Inoue suffered a fractured orbital bone in the Donaire fight, the first one, it took him approximately 10 or 11 months to return to action. It's been a year.
And you hear what Ugas is saying. He ain't got no fight date.
Yordanis Ugas is one of many fighters at the PBC that's sitting idle on the shelf with nothing to do. You're talking about Ugas, you're talking about Thurman, Errol Spence, Jermall Charlo, Gary Russell,
Leo Santa Cruz.
I can go on. And a scarcity of resources at Showtime leads to a scarcity of fight dates for the fighters.
Maybe that's why some of these guys are branching out. Stephen Fulton is set to face Naoya Inoue in Japan. And it's not the PBC or Showtime paying for that show.
It's not on their dime. There are rumors and rumblings of Top Rank potentially trying to sign Andy Ruiz.
One of the PBC's heavyweights, their prize stallion at heavyweight, Deontay Wilder, he's supposed to be jumping in bed with the Saudis to do a Joshua showdown later on this year. And once again, that's not on the PBC or Showtime's dime.
I don't even know if they're going to be involved in any way when it comes to that fight as far as broadcasting it here in America. You think about Tim Tszyu, who announced his next fight yesterday. He signed to the PBC about a year ago.
I don't know if they're going to broadcast his next fight here in America either.
But I know they're not the ones paying for it. The money to do that show isn't coming from Al Heyman. It's not coming from the PBC or Showtime. It's coming from No Limit Promotions in Australia.
We talk about belt tightening. What does that mean? That means that the annual budget for boxing at Showtime has likely shrunk over time to where they can only do so many shows at a time. They can't keep all these guys active, fighting more than once a year. Some of them don't fight at all.
The silver lining for a guy like Tim Tszyu is he's not based out of America. He doesn't rely on Al Heyman or Showtime to secure him fights. His long-standing relationship with No Limit is what keeps him fighting and keeps him active.
But all of their fighters are not so lucky.
You say that the Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia fight performed well at the box office, and that's all well and good for the fighter. That's good for his manager and whoever promoted the show. But in the greater scheme of things, that doesn't mean much to Showtime as a platform. That lone...
How many more shows like that can you put on? How many more fights like that will get that kind of reception are out there for Gervonta, and are you about to make them?
Because what Showtime is concerned with as a platform is bringing eyes and keeping those eyes there on their network, on their platform, whatever drives subscriptions. And one pay-per-view, however big it was,
Could be a one and done.
because you don't actually have to subscribe to Showtime to purchase the pay-per-view. You can purchase it without being subscribed.
I'm not rooting for these people to lose their jobs. I'm just giving it to you straight because it's the only way I know how to give it to you.
Things aren't looking good at Showtime.
What do you want me to say? You think they're laying people off because of how well they're doing?
You hear about top-ranked signing fighters. Matchroom very recently had 2 very high-profile acquisitions, 3 overall, and there are more coming. Even Golden Boy signed a couple of kids recently. But look at the PBC and tell me.
They signed anybody recently?
Just telling you, the PBC and Showtime are on unstable ground.